everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Good evening. It is 6:30 and the public hearing for temporary ordinance B15 will now come to order. First, I want to make everyone aware that public hearings are a way to openly and transparently receive facts and opinions about an ordinance, both for and against. It will be asked at least 3 times alternately who would like to speak in favor of or against this ordinance. After each question is asked at least 3 times, the public hearing will be closed, with the ordinance then being discussed in the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting immediately following the public hearing. While in committee, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So I'll begin with reading temporary ordinance B15, presented by the administration upon recommendation by the Planning Commission, approving a regulatory text amendment to table 1131-1 zoning districts and uses to allow vehicle wash/detailing as a conditional use in MU3 suburban center and MU5 urban center districts and declaring an emergency. Mr. Paul, would you please share the details of this ordinance?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Paul with the Planning Division in the Community Development Department with the city. I'll go ahead and share my screen here so you can take a look at what we're referring to in text format. And in terms of text, we're really amending very little. In fact, none. It's really just these 2 symbols here that indicate where on this table, and the table we're referring to is 1131-1 from the City of Cuyahoga Falls General Development Code. That's zoning districts and uses. Currently, vehicle wash/detailing uses are allowed by conditional use in MU4 suburban corridors, C1 general districts, which is our commercial district, E1 employment districts, which is like light or clean manufacturing, packaging, assembly, things of that nature, commercial office, and the M1 manufacturing districts, which is typical of how you might think of a manufacturing district. Those areas currently require conditional use review and approval for the vehicle wash and detailing site. We're simply adding it to these adjacent districts of MU3 and MU5. You're still required to get a conditional use if you want to apply for it in one of those districts, and any of the other districts where you do not see that symbolized, you're not permitted to apply for it there. So it just adds a little more consistency than mixed use district area. We had a couple of separate inquiries that dealt with that type of use within those districts, and it was determined that it would have no negative impact in terms of the land use policy of the city. And so that effectively accounts for all the background information on the proposed text amendment, and I'd be glad to help answer any questions if I can.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. At this point, we'll hear from anyone who would like to speak regarding this ordinance. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak, but we will alternate between for and against. Please note there is a 3-minute time limit on comments from the public. And in the interest of time, if we have many who would like to speak, please refrain from repeating comments that have already been made. Before you begin, please clearly state your name and your address for the clerk. Is there anyone who at this time would like to speak against temporary ordinance B15?
Madam Chair, I have a letter that I need to read into the record.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Letter is from Thomas Sullivan, 447 Talmadge Road, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. Concerning the request to allow car washes in MU3 and MU5 zoning districts, I feel you would be doing an injustice to those living in the residential neighborhoods abutting the areas in question. Using the Ptolemy app from the city's website and filter the zoning to MU and look at the number of parcels that could be affected. As you all learned with the Portage Trail extension disaster last winter, there are many who do not want this use in their backyards. I want to remind those on council who know and enlighten those who do not, but I not only attended my own ward charrette, but also the charrettes of the adjoining wards of my neighborhood. I also served on the steering committee that eventually authored the code that you're currently working to, along with serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals for 16 years. Based on my actual experience, I feel that anyone can say with confidence that what we thought of when someone said car wash back then is nothing at all like the car washes being built today. I find it unreasonable to even consider putting one of these monstrosities on any property that abuts a residential use. You have a bigger obligation to residents of the city than you do to some corporate entity. With that said, I urge council to put yourselves in the place of those who wrote this document and ask yourself, does this make sense? Consider how the neighbors who attended those charrettes would feel if the questions were asked today, and vote this down. Remember, you are the last elected oversight before something becomes law.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Clerk. At this time, I would ask if anybody would like to speak in favor of temporary ordinance 15. Mr. Cruz, I see you're on the call. Would you like to speak to this ordinance?
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me? All right, I want to make sure I got the Zoom all hooked up and everything properly. As many of you know, I've reached out to several of you about the opportunity to put a car wash facility in the corner of Front and Hudson. Our specific location for this text amendment, in doing our research, our market studies, as well as the analysis of over 400, maybe 500 feet away from any residence, specifically for our location there at the corner of Front and Hudson, was important to us, as well as the traffic studies that we'll get in and research, as we continue the planning process. But at this particular point, we'd appreciate an opportunity to be a part of Cuyahoga Falls. Thus, listening to everything that had happened previous with the Portage trails butting up to residents. That's why we chose this specific location, not only for the retail area based on our marketing report, but also the extreme distance away from residents. Thank you, Mrs. Spinner.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Is there anyone at this time who would like to, again, speak against ordinance B15? And I'm looking through the attendance. I'm not seeing any hands up. I'd like to open it up then for anyone who would like to speak for ordinance B15.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Seifert. I happen to be an architect in 3390 Verner Road, Stowe, Ohio. But I work with Mr. Cruz, who just previously spoke. Just want to briefly touch on Mr. Sullivan's points to say that passage of this legislation doesn't short circuit the regular process that still needs to be done through the City of Cuyahoga Falls Planning and Commission and Planning Department. We would still need to go through site plan approval, including the conditional use process, and meet all the requirements therein. So there will certainly be no attempt to short circuit any of the proper approval channels. And all this does is allow that process to work its way through the approval process and set conditions for that use at the specific location that we would be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seifert. This time I will ask one last time if there is anyone on the call tonight that would like to speak against ordinance B15. I don't see any hands. And again, one last time, if there's anyone on the call that would like to speak in favor of ordinance B15. Okay, I don't see any. So thank you everyone who shared your thoughts and comments this evening. And at this time, the Planning and Zoning public hearing is now closed. It is now 6:40 and the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting will come to order. First, we have minutes to approve from the meetings on April 19th, 2021 and May 3rd, 2021. There any additions, subtractions, or corrections? Hearing none, they will stand as written. Next, we have one ordinance to discuss this evening, temporary ordinance B15. Temporary ordinance B15 presented by the administration upon recommendation by the Planning Commission approving a regulatory text amendment to table 1131-1 zoning districts and uses to allow vehicle wash / detailing as a conditional use in MU3 suburban center and MU5 urban center districts and declaring an emergency. And Mr. Paul, do you have anything to add, or would you like to explain anything further on ordinance B15?
Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. If there are specific questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
I know we had spoken before. I had some questions, but again, just to reiterate what has been said and clarify that this will not be just a blanket, a car wash can go anywhere. There still will have to be conditions met and approval by the Planning Commission as well as City Council. And I just want to also clarify that I remember from the Planning Commission meeting that basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that where there are now car repair shops, like that would be like a place, for example, where now you could put a car wash. Is that right?
Well, I think again, and I can share the screen again, it's really comes down to what's in the use table and what's proposed. This is only a portion of it, but this portion covers out of this table 1131-1, which uses require conditional zoning approval. Effectively, we're saying where is the logic or the cutoff in terms of it being capable of requested in MU4, but not the MU5 and the MU3. We thought that it just was a little more consistent and provided more clarity and was a logical choice based on multiple inquiries and the fact that we think that it's relatively low impact in terms of where we're talking about. It's still not permitted in residential districts. And the point of the conditional use is that it gives, through the vetting process, an opportunity to look at it in a site-specific way in which you might say, you can regulate things more strictly, such as the hours, the locations of some of the equipment, things of that nature, additional screening. Those are some of the conditional elements that would be required when an applicant came through for that type of use.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that further clarification. I don't have any other questions or comments at this time. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Yes, Mr. James.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of interest is I have been in contact with Mr. Cruz all along through this. I was very educated in what's going on here. And also I have been in communication with the McCready family also, and just want to say that the McCreadys are all for this sale and this development. And I do know that Mr. Cruz has done his homework when it comes to checking the demographics, also reaching out to a lot of the business owners that are around this property. And there's been an overwhelming majority. Now, there has been dissenting people, but there's been an overwhelming majority of folks that are all for this development. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. James. Just expanding on that a little bit, I had an opportunity to ask some questions of Mr. Cruz also. And from what I understand, there is a great deal of community involvement and contributions. Mr. Cruz, did you want to expand on any of that?
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and Mr. James for the warm comments. Yeah, I mean, just to kind of give you guys an example, we are, and I reached out to Dr. Nichols too, because as you all know, we're investing in this property here. It's going to increase the tax value, and property tax, 50 some percent of that goes to the school districts. So it's important, not only are we giving back from a financial standpoint to the community there, but also we just had Teachers Appreciation Week, where we've given out free car washes during the entire week to teachers in appreciation. I personally am a Rotarian in the city of Strongsville and sit on the Connections program, where students that are deemed at risk to graduate help volunteer, as well as our team is encouraged to do that. We also help Boy Scouts. We sent multiple troops during their leadership camps during the summer, giving them free car washes to donate. So we want to continue to give back like we have over the 8 years of our existence and the 6 municipalities that we serve in now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
It looks like Mr. Stamps has his hand up.
Okay. Mr. Stamps, please go right
Oh,
ahead.
well, thank you. I'm not part of the committee, but is it okay to address the committee now?
I did not see any other hands up for the committee. Mr. Miller, did you want to add anything?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Stamps.
Maybe I should put my hand down if there aren't any other hands up. But no, I had a question for Mr. Paul on the what is the, I guess, what's the catalyst or the origin of this request? Do you have any idea why it you know, and forgive me, you know, we're looks like we're expanding the conditional use into additional areas. Is there, I mean, I know you talked about the consistency of ordinances, but if you could, you know, maybe explain why. I mean, you know, we all kind of went through what was happening there up at Portage Trail Extension, and Mr. You know, the letter earlier addressed that. You know, it was very contentious. And is there a reason why we want to expand this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question, and that's what was considered at the Planning Commission. They ended up making that recommendation. I think it was just based on the fact that there were a couple inquiries, whereas the only other mechanism to get there would be to go through the zoning amendment process. And having multiple inquiries at the same time on multiple sites, in addition to having a couple vehicle wash facilities that exist in those districts that are non-conforming, just seemed to point to it making sense to use the text amendment on the table, because it was probably the most straightforward way to address it. Sometimes if we have numerous different types of inquiries or things that are beginning to take trend, it's worth looking at the code to understand whether or not we need to adjust or ultimately amend it in some way. And as I said, in terms of the consistency going from one district to another, prospective businesses or landowners, or even if you have an existing vehicle wash facility in one of those districts, it is more consistent, I think, at least in that you have a more reasonable expectation as to just the ability to apply for it only in the one mixed district. You can still apply for that in the other districts, but you're right. Yes, we'd be expanding the opportunity to request that conditional use in those 2 additional mixed use districts. So I think on the surface, when you look at it, it's kind of odd that it's identified in only one mixed use district to do so. And then secondly, that we have ones that exist in those areas and ones that are being pursued in some of those areas in which that's really kind of the root from where the request to amend the text came from.
Thank you. If I may ask another question, MU3 suburban center and MU5 urban center districts, are there, and I apologize, I don't know this, but are there in Ward 8, are there those centers and districts in Ward 8?
Yeah, there are. I mean, a couple of the key intersections in Ward 8 are zoned that as mixed-use centers, and that includes area both at Cuyahoga Lake Road and East Steeles, although I think that's in Ward 5. But as you get further over, East Steeles Corners Road and State Road is a mixed-use center district, and that's it's predominantly automotive type uses that exists there. We went through some fairly extensive review of that when Cartwright came through to renovate the old Burger King facility. And although it's different because that's an outdoor sales lot, there are a lot of uses that seem to fall under that same type of identification that would support this there.
Are there any other that you know of offhand, or, because I think what I've heard is these areas aren't located near residential areas. Is that accurate, or do I have that wrong?
Generally not as close to the ones that we're talking about here. Would they be located? In some instances, those districts are going to abut residential districts, not in Ward 8 specifically with this example, but the mixed use center corridor that is zoned that way at Portage Trail and 7th Street. So much of Portage Trail is zoned with that mixed use designation that you can see it. But it abuts an R4 district, and we have limited and conditional uses that are vehicle oriented there as well. Now, they probably include some type of retail component, such as a restaurant or a pharmacy or something, but in some cases they'll abut by district. Eventually the district has to go transition to another one. I think generally for the MU5, you won't find that it has too many strictly residential neighboring districts. But that's all dependent on the map and the specific location we're talking about. And that's one thing that at least you are still protected in with the conditional use, is that based on the specific site characteristics of a location, you have the ability and the authority to review it and put the best conditions in place for the way that site is laid out and where it exists, if you have the opportunity to apply for the conditional use in it, which is not all districts.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was muted. Are there any other comments or questions? Oh, I see hands. Okay. Mr. Balthus, you're on my top right screen, so go right ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to start by thanking Brian. He also called me to give me information on the project, and I appreciated that. And I had a chance to drive over and look at the area. And I also heard a little bit about their commitment to the community and the schools, and I appreciate that very much. So just want to say thank you. And I think on this specific site, this is a good project. But Madam Chair, if I could, I do have two questions I'd like to ask Mr. Paul.
Please go right ahead.
Adam, and I apologize that I don't know this off the top of my head, but the site that we're talking about for this development, is it an MU3 or an MU5?
I think we're talking about an MU5, but there were two separate ones. And for the record, I'm not in receipt of, and I don't believe our office is in receipt of any development plans for a site. So I don't want to speculate, and I can't really address it without, I guess, having that, unless somebody wants to inform me of specifically which site we're talking about and I can tell you what the zoning designation is. But I don't really deal in that until we get plans in our office that are officially on file, particularly in a public forum.
Great. I guess I'll just ask generally, the area where Strickland's is, do you happen to know the general zoning of that area?
Yeah, if we can, I can utilize one of our special tools online and share the screen here, and we can all look at the zoning designation. So this is Summit County's GIS map. If we have again, a parcel number or a street address specifically to look at, I can get there in a little quicker fashion, but
I do all directions based on the closest ice cream shop.
all right.
I apologize.
That's, custard counts, I guess, in this case. And so you see that it takes a little time here just with how much content we have, but it's not bad to look at the map together as it's being discussed, because we can help get into some more. Here I'm getting a little bit too far here. And right, if we're talking about the site where there's one of the existing, which would be non-conforming sites, it could prove difficult even to renovate it under the nonconformities code, even if you were maintaining the same use. So the nonconformities deals in uses, structures, and parcels that don't meet the current zoning standards. So if we had one that wasn't a permissible use and somebody wanted to come in and renovate the space and improve it, they could face some challenges that might not make that possible without an amendment to the zoning map or a change in the use table. Okay, so we have now scaled up all of our zoning here, and you're looking at an MU5 district. It does, in part, at least give the appearance that it's going to abut an R4, but again, I mean, you've got some streets and some separation in there that kind of makes that not exactly as it might appear on the zoning map. But all of this is MU5, and then that of course goes on for some time. Then MU6 is our downtown. That's not included in this discussion. MU3 is generally more at some of the nodes or the central intersections for mixed use.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Madam Chair, if I could ask an additional question. Thank you. And Adam, this is, if you need some time to, I don't want to put you on the spot. If you need some time to get back to me on this, this is no problem at all. But kind of following up on Councilman Stam's line of questioning, mm-hmm. I'm interested to better understand, if we pass this amendment and entities have a right to apply for a conditional use permit, that name's a little misleading. That means they have the right to do it. We just have certain abilities to add more screening, add more noise cancellation, more lighting cancellation. But at the end of the day, at least my reading of the law is we are required to ultimately approve it as long as they make the reasonable conditional uses conditions that we put on it, including screening and things along those lines. I guess my question would be, how is that different than if someone tried to put a car wash now on an M3 or an MU3 or an MU5 and there are pre-existing non-conforming uses? Is it one of those things that do you feel that our zoning law would prohibit it and we would just deny it and they would have no legal recourse? Or do you feel that given the pre-existing uses or non-conforming uses that already exist, and again, that's something that you don't have to answer now. There's a lot of moving parts there, but it is something that I'm thinking about and would like to follow up with you at some point. But of course, if you want to answer it now, you're welcome to. But I'm just kind of curious how we're changing the legal rights of property owners in these districts and the implications it could have on surrounding properties.
Yeah, and it's good to be analytical about it in that way. I think that with respect to the non-conforming uses and the pre-existing ones, I kind of mentioned that there would be limited ability for expansion or overhaul for them, as opposed to if it came in new with the conditional use requirements. That might be restrictive on both of our ends in terms of what we might prefer to see in terms of buffering, noise production, screening, et cetera, and in terms of what they might be capable of investing or renovating in a facility, because Chapter 1114 of the General Development Code that regulates nonconformities will tell us that, based on certain percentages, generally 50% of the floor area or the fair market value of it, if it's a nonconforming use and they wish to exceed those by renovation, alteration, or addition, they really can't, in which case maybe there potentially is a taking based on that. So yeah, I mean, I think it can be sticky on both ends. I don't know if this is addressing all your concerns just with that one comment, but that's in part what I think makes it a viable change.
I appreciate your times, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Balthus. Ms. Nichols Rhodes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions for Mr. Paul. Is that all right?
Absolutely. Please go right ahead.
Thank you. Adam, again, one of these, I don't know if you're going to know the answer right off the bat, but the first one is how many non-conforming car washes would you estimate are in the city now?
That's a fair question. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I can think of at least one in an area we were just looking at.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then this other one, you're probably not gonna, but of all of our land that has mixed use designation for the zoning, how much of the mixed use would you say MU3 and 5 take up? Like, are they the majority, the minority?
No, that's probably an answer we could more readily get you in terms of just utilizing either as it was mentioned earlier, Ptolemy has this building blocks tool on an interactive map that we use on the city's website. And we have, through some other past research and reviews, land percentage by use. That would not be difficult for me to return to the council in short order.
Okay, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols Rhodes. And next I saw Mr. Ayula.
I have a question for Adam.
Please go right ahead.
And Adam, one of the things in the letter that Susan received from one of our residents asked about just if we do go with this one area, and I know I've talked to Mr. Cruz and the McCready's also, just like Jerry said, and how close are they to residents? I went down there and saw the whole area, and if we do make, vote this the right way and everything, it's not that close to houses, is it?
Not on that side. I think if we're referring to the same area by Strickland's or Chase or Acme, I don't think it is ultimately. I mean, plus there's Route 8 there. There, but again, in some instances, it will be site specific. Getting back to Ms. Nichols Rhodes' question, I can think of at least 3 now quickly here off the top of my head that would be in districts that are non-conforming, and they're in various different parts of the city. And so, as it comes up in those scenarios, although we dealt with one that had recently been here and was considered, and I mean, in some respects, you can say that site was on a major commercial corridor in the city that's been that way for some time. And, you utilize the conditional zoning mechanism to try to help protect those residents in the best way you can. But I don't think the site that we just looked at in terms of the zoning map and where the abutting residential district is actually that close to the site itself.
I didn't think so. I was definitely not real in favor of the one on West Portage Trail there, but this one doesn't seem like it's very close to the houses at all. And I can't figure that they would be, calling and complaining that much unless we had all that stadium lighting again.
Mhm. Agreed. And all those things, keeping in mind that generally in our mixed use district, material and site requirements are increased above that which it would be in a general district like a C1 commercial or the E1 employment district. We're going to have higher material quality standards. We restrict those based on planning area and district in terms of the height of exterior lighting. None of the districts are to permit light that spills off of the property. And so that's required with the photometric plan. And all of those types of things are good considerations and they're good points to make here. And they're the types of things that come under review when projects on any site come into the city. But typically with the mixed use district ones, we'll have probably a more stringent material requirement for what gets constructed and for the landscape buffering between abutting uses, particularly with residential ones.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions from council? Yes, Mr. Gorbach.
Thank you. I appreciate it. At least one of the impetuses of this is, Mr. Cruz's projected project that he wants to do at the current McCready's Tire and Auto. And, I think you need to go back, and I think Ms. Spinner said it too, that currently automobile repair shops are allowed in MU3 and MU5, and they have their own, they have a certain amount of noise, they're open a certain amount of hours. And I don't see in this instance, and I agree with Mr. Balthus, that a car wash in this location is suitable. I mean, there aren't homes around there, and I don't see how a car wash is going to be any more obtrusive than the current use of that building now. I'm not saying, Jeff, that your business is intrusive at all, but it's not going to be more noise than an auto repair shop would produce. And again, as was discussed, we have, with the conditional uses, we have the opportunity to regulate hours and additional screening with the conditional use. So with respect to this, to that specific location in this district, I mean, I see no problem with that pursuit. I recognize Mr. Balthus's questions and potential concerns with other opportunities in various locations in the city with MU3 and MU5. But again, we hold the ability to control much of that with the conditional uses that we can place on there. But we're waiting for those, I guess, those specific answers maybe before we vote next week on this ordinance. But I would ask that the committee bring it out. I'd like the opportunity to vote on it next week. And again, with this specific project at that location, I think it's fine. I think it'll be an improvement. And again, Jeff, I'm not, please don't take this as any disparagement whatsoever. I've talked to Jeff and with this, and he would like to see it improved. He would like to be improving that location, and sometimes it's not possible. And I think it'd be a good fit. So I don't have any more comments at this time, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate everyone else's time and involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorbach. Have any other comments or questions from council? I don't see any other hands up. Any comments or questions from anyone else on the call? Okay. I am not seeing any. Were there any other comments from the public? Ms. Capriola or Ms. Ciatola?
No, Madam Chair.
Oh,
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I really appreciate everyone's comments and all the answers that we received this evening. I will now entertain a motion to bring temporary ordinance B15 out of committee for a vote next week.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you, everyone. And that concludes the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting this evening.
Okay, it's 7:10. And I call the Finance Committee meeting to order. We have a few temporary ordinances to discuss this evening. Prior to doing so, I'd like to approve the minutes dated May 3rd, 2021. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, they'll stand as written. Let's begin with temporary ordinance B31. Presented by the administration, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a sub-award grant agreement with the Institute for Intergovernmental Research for the Comprehensive, Secure, and Responsible Drug Disposal Program in an amount not to exceed $99,774 for the purchase of drug disposal bags and to make the necessary appropriations for the same and declaring an emergency. Chief Davis, I believe you wanted to start off this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm.
This is a grant that's being awarded through the Bureau of Justice. And we applied basically on behalf of Summit County Community Partnership. What this does is allows us to purchase the Deterra bags and partner with Summit County Community Partnership on the distribution of these bags. The Deterra bags, you've probably seen them, are little purple bags that you can put narcotics in or other drugs, and it renders them safe for disposal. You can just put them in and then throw it away. I do have Mr. Daryl Brake, who's the president of Summit County Community Partnership tonight. He wanted to offer a couple comments on the project.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brake, thank you for attending. What would you like to offer with regards to this ordinance?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak, and also the partnership that we've had with Chief Davis and Cuyahoga Falls Police during the whole process. This is not a new program. It's a program that Community Partnership has operated for 4 years. Well, actually, it's almost 5 years now. It's been wildly successful, to say the least. But what this allows us to do, last year we distributed 23,000 pouches in the course of a year. We still have the capacity to distribute those pouches, but with this new grant, it will allow us to actually more than double our footprint in Summit County, allowing for these drug disposal of medicines by residents. And so we welcome the opportunity to do that. I think that it's going to make our community safe. We understand and know that better than 70% of those suffering with substance use disorder oftentimes get their pills from family and friends. And so our project is to educate the community, not just passing the pouches out, but it'll be educating the community about safe storage of your medicines so that they're not stolen or diverted, but then also those that are outdated or no longer needed, disposing of them in an environmentally safe way, and in the process, keeping them out of harm's way. So we're very much looking forward to this opportunity. I want to also say that there are only 6 communities in the whole nation that were awarded this grant, and we were one of them. And so it's an honor for us as a county and a community. It shows the working together that we have, and we're able to convince those on a national landscape the work that we have done in the past and we're capable of doing. And I think them awarding us this grant has put trust in us that we're going to do more of the same.
That's impressive, being one of the recipients of the grant, given the only 6. That's amazing. What's the mechanism for the distribution of those bags? How does that occur?
Actually, we have over 90 partners. 'Cause like I said, we've been doing this for, it'll be 5 years, August 31st. So we have 90 distribution partners around the county that we provide pouches to. And I have a copy of the pouch here. This is what it looks like. It has a postcard on the back with a place for a zip code. And what we do is we have distributors throughout the county, and we follow the Summit County Public Health reporting on overdoses. And those areas that have more overdoses, we get more pouches out in that area by zip code so that more pills are taken out of the way, harm's way. So this is how we distribute the pouches, and we've got those distributors. This will allow us to actually bring new partners in. Like I said, we have over 90 partners. We have over 150 distribution sites right now, but this will allow us to actually do more and bring on new partners. And the manufacturer, Verde Technologies out of Minnesota, has stepped up and has agreed to work with us around developing some new ways of distributing these pouches that they've seen successful in other parts of the country.
Well, very good. Well, thank you. And then money-wise, this is a grant. So we're a pass-through on this money. Is that correct, Mr. Hoffman?
Yes, this money is passed through, so this is a grant.
Right, very good. Just wanted to make that clear. Are there any questions or comments for either Chief Davis or Mr. Brake from the Finance Committee? No. From the rest of council? Mr. Balthus? I saw you, Susan. I'll get you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Daryl, it's great to see you. Thank you for being with us this evening. I just want to take a moment to say how important I think this is and how grateful I am for all the work of your organization, Daryl, and then also Jack here in the police department and the mayor. I mean, Cuyahoga Falls has been a leader in fighting the opiate epidemic, and I'm very proud to see that continuing to be the case. I think that with all the challenges related to COVID over the past year, they rightfully took a lot of attention and a lot of energy that sometimes it's easy to take your eye off the ball when it comes to this problem. And it's comforting to see that that's not what happened here and that we're still very focused and winning national grants to continue to fight and address this issue. And I guess my only specific question for anyone who may be listening at home, are these bags available at our police department if people would like them, or where are places in Cuyahoga Falls that people would have access to these bags if they would need them?
We have them, and so does NECO. And a lot of our events, we hand them out. Drug Take Back Day, we handed them out to people that brought drugs to Drug Take Back Day, so they would have them. And I believe some of the Acmes have them, the pharmacies at the Acmes, Daryl.
Yes.
So, but we'll be able to make them more readily available. I believe the fire stations have them. We use them, as part of the QRT program. So we try to make them readily available.
I appreciate everybody's leadership on this issue. It's not an overstatement to say these things save lives. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Mrs. Spinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a comment and a question. First, the comment, I think it's fascinating that you're able to target areas that show a need, and you can effectively remove those drugs from people who might abuse them. My question is just a logistics question. Once somebody has a bag, then what do they do with it in terms of disposal?
That's the beauty of the pouch. This pouch I have in my hand is not of the new design, but it is actually coated with a substance that when this goes in the landfill, it attracts microbes and they eat it up. The pouches we will be getting under this program are made of a different substance, and they actually naturally decompose along with the contents. It doesn't need the microbes to dissolve of them completely in an environmentally safe way. So we'll be getting the newer pouches, and that's how it works. You tear the top off, You can put 6 ounces, the directions on the pack, you put 45 pills in this one, 6 ounces of liquid medicine or 6 medicine patches, fill it halfway with water, hold it for 30 seconds, zip it shut and throw it in the trash. And when it gets to the landfill, it will soon be gonzo.
Well, it can't get any easier than that. Thank you very much. I appreciate the explanation.
Are there any other comments or questions for either Chief Davis or Mr. Brake?
Could I make one other quick comment?
You may.
Western Reserve Hospital uses these as well. They're one of our distributors as well, and so they're actually helping those that are in the hospital and leaving with medications. They're actually educating them and getting them to dispose of their medicines. We're also working to get them in the doctor's offices, as many as we can. So this is going to allow us to do a lot more blanketing of our community in, number one, making people aware of the pouches, how to use them, and then getting those medicines off the street.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brake, for your commitment to this cause and involving Cuyahoga Falls in the manner you have. I'm glad that we could assist with this grant. And again, I think that shows Cuyahoga Falls' commitment to this cause as a city, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Do I have a motion to bring out temporary ordinance B31?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you again. Temporary ordinance B32 presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without competitive bidding with Atlantic Emergency Solutions, Inc. for various vehicle repairs, supplies, and equipment used by the fire department and declaring an emergency. Chief Martin.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. You think you're taking us on a hike tonight?
Well, I am. I'm actually at a Woodridge baseball playoff game right now.
Okay.
And my son just drove in a winning run. So.
Well, excellent.
But you have my undivided attention.
Well, I hope you're watching out for foul balls.
I need to, yes. Thanks for having me.
What can you tell us about this?
So yeah, essentially what we use Atlantic for is all maintenance for our fleet, especially our larger apparatus. And we've reached a point where what we use Atlantic for, which was previously Finley Fire. Finley Fire was bought by Atlantic, ultimately a good move for us. But we've crossed the threshold with the rising cost in, naturally in parts and labor and everything else. And this is a requirement to come see you because we spend that much money with Atlantic.
Right. You crossed the threshold with respect to border control, but this is budgeted monies we're talking about.
Correct. Yeah, it's just with the single vendor. So we have to make this action because Atlantic does so much work for us.
Okay. Why was it advantageous to us that Atlantic purchased Finley Fire?
Well, so Finley Fire was their business mantra has always been let's sell trucks and we'll also maintain them down the line. Atlantic is a company, it's a large company based out of North Carolina. Their business model is more maintenance based and will also sell the vehicles, which makes it better for us overall because of our specialized needs in fire truck maintenance and repair. So they know what they're doing. They're opening shops throughout, I think 5 shops throughout the state. They already have one open in Macedonia.
Oh, okay.
The one thing that I'm a little cautious about is I'm not sure that their business model includes the weekly contract visits that we've had with Finley for years. If it doesn't, I have a plan B and a plan C to go to if need be. But for this year, for 2021, we have the contract and they're going to fill it. So we're in good shape.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions or comments for Chief Martin? Anybody from the rail? I'm waiting for you to have to dive out of the way of something. I might just keep you on for a while just to see if we can get some action.
I'm trying to get as far away from the crowd as I can. I think we're going to win this one, thankfully.
I don't see any other motions by anybody to be heard. So do we have a motion to bring out temporary ordinance B32 for a vote next week?
So moved.
Second.
We We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Chief, thanks. Get back to your game. We'll vote on that next Monday. Let's move to B33, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract or contracts without competitive bidding with AT&T Corp. For the lease of public safety answering points and related equipment and software and declaring an emergency. We'll bounce back to the chief of the other safety force, Chief Davis, right?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
What this is a replacement for our phone system for our communications dispatch. It was purchased in 2008 when we upgraded at Fire Station 5, and it's outlived its expectancy, and it really needs to be replaced. Mark Reese from the IT department and John Conage's department went through the different vendors and found this to be the best solution for us. And then Law negotiated the contract for us.
Okay, very good. Now this is just for Fire Station 5?
This is the communications. Yeah, this is our phone network for the communications division. So it's not for Fire Station 5, it's for the dispatch center in Fire Station 5.
Okay, very good. If approved, when will you make the transfer from the old to the new? Do you know what your lead time is?
I don't. It'll take a little while according to what Mark told me, but we really need to get the ball rolling.
Right.
Everything's in place. We've met with them. They have the solutions for it. So it's just a matter of scheduling it and getting it in place.
Okay, very good. Questions or comments from the committee? Questions or comments from the rail? I didn't ask the public on the first two. Is there anyone on the call from the public that had a comment on anything from Finance Committee up to this point? No. Dana, did you have anything to you regarding any of these ordinances?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Okay, back to B33 then. If there's no additional questions or comments, is there a motion to bring out temporary ordinance B33 for a vote next week?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll vote on temporary ordinance B33. Thanks, Chief. Temporary ordinance B34 presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the director of law to enter into a settlement agreement in the case of BW et al. The City of Cuyahoga Falls and declaring an emergency. We discussed or heard about this in executive session. Are there any additional comments, Ms. Viotola, from you or your office?
No.
Okay.
Chairman
Are there any questions or comments from the Finance Committee? Rail? Public? Is there a motion to bring out temporary ordinance B34?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll vote on temporary ordinance B34 next week. Is there anything else to come before the Finance Committee?
Mr. Chair,
Mayor?
if I could, I just wanted to talk briefly on the COVID update. A lot of things changing quite rapidly, as you know.
Yes.
So the virtual meetings actually are set to expire on July 1st of this year, regardless. However, I'm planning on opening City Hall on June 2nd, which is when all the orders expire. So obviously you're a self-governing body. No one can tell council what to do with your meetings. However, the state's telling you it has to be by July 1st, you have to go live. I just want to let everyone know that I plan on opening City Hall on June 2nd because everything expires at midnight on June 1st. So I see no reason to keep the doors closed. The experts are telling us that everything is lifted, so therefore we're going to operate as normal.
Okay, very good. I don't know if there's any discussion within council regarding that. I guess maybe President Brillhart, we can maybe set a time that we all discuss that, what we want to do insofar as meeting again in person, but that doesn't have to be now. Is there anything else to come before Finance Committee? All right, very good. Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.